while.
Yep.
Or are you going to keep it up there?
I will keep it up there while they read it.
Okay. Miguel is an 8-year-old Mexican-American cisgender boy. They use he, him pronouns. Being brought to therapy by his mother, Maria, she, her, a 32-year-old cisgender first-generation immigrant from Mexico, whose parents, Miguel, and his twin sister, Carmen, she, her, alone since their father left before they were born. She immigrated to the United States at 25, shortly after the birth of her children, in hopes of giving them a better life, and speaks English and Spanish fluently. Carmen is not attending therapy with Miguel and Maria and stays home with Maria's sister, who babysits when Maria is working long and unpredictable hours as a waitress. Maria has brought Miguel into therapy because his misbehavior at school is getting him into trouble. His grades are slipping, and he's in danger of having to repeat the 3rd grade if things don't improve. Apart from his school troubles, he is defiant at home and refuses to comply with her rules. He argues constantly, quote-unquote, with Maria and antagonizes Carmen. Maria doesn't understand why he's always so angry and feels she's out of options. Miguel is sullen and silent as Maria describes the problem. When asked about what she has tried in the past, Maria tells you that she struggles not to rise to Miguel's anger, and they often get into screaming matches. Sometimes she worries that she will lose control and hit him in her anger. To avoid that, sometimes she gives in quickly to what he wants, but reports that only makes things worse. She has tried setting up a reward system with stickers and small treats for good behavior, which worked in the short term, but things slid back quickly. She has also tried grounding him, taking away his TV privileges, and stopping him from going to soccer practice, his favorite activity. Miguel only grows more defiant in response, leading Maria to become even harsher in her punishments. Maria grew up in an authoritarian household where she and her 2 brothers respected and feared their father and always obeyed his commands. She was close to her mother and very distant from her father. Maria admits that she doesn't want her children to feel that fear and wants to have a closer and more caring relationship, but is easily frustrated when Miguel acts out because she never would have pulled something like that, quote-unquote, with her father. Maria is worried that Miguel's anger and defiance are because she isn't a good enough parent and hopes that you can fix Miguel's behavior problems so that she can get the sweet kid, quote-unquote, that her son used to be back.
I can also drop this in the Discord if that would help anyone for reading and accessing.
Okay. Thank you, though.
Yeah. What's up, Katie?
My first thought is I would want to ask her if Miguel's father's in the picture at all, and I would ask a little bit more about the family system. It does name Maria working, and then her sister takes care of or helps with the kids, but I would want to know if there's a father figure in Miguel's life.
So then are we answering that question, or are we just theorizing?
So this is where we get to have fun and try to play with this. Try to ask it as if you're the therapist.
Oh.
Is there a father figure in Miguel's life?
The mothers had several partners, several male and female partners throughout the years, but nothing serious. And their birth father, they've had no contact with them.
Is the birth father still in Mexico?
They don't know anything. They just dipped.
Let's say probably, though.
Yeah. Because it was before they moved to the States.
Okay, but no contact.
It sounds like the parenting technique is authoritarian, and it hasn't worked. And I think I'd want to ask Maria. Is that right? No, Maria. Have you happened to notice that behavior's been better, or you've had that sweet boy back at any moment when you've done things differently than how you normally tend to do them? Like, have you had a happenstance where something happened and like, oh, that actually feels better?
very solution focused question.
And this is where the two of you could just make stuff up.
Yeah, I'm bad at making
Oh.
stuff.
So when they spend one-on-one time together, doing some fun things like going out to eat or kicking the soccer ball around, yes, but because she's so busy with work and these other relationships, she doesn't get time to do those things. And the sister who watches them doesn't do any of those things, or too focused on the other child.
Yeah, it sounds like a predicament.
Sure is.
I would ask Miguel about how he's feeling, being like what he's feeling right now, while being here today.
Oh no.
Don't know. And what he enjoys doing, and just some get to know you type questions.
Well, he likes going to soccer practice, and he gets really frustrated being at school easily and feels like his teachers don't really understand him. But he likes spending time with his aunt and feels like all he does is fight with his mom.
And then, so maybe then after that, I would ask about, do you know why we're all here today? No. And then kind of share to make that time with your mom more enjoyable and work to understand each other better. So Maria describes Miguel as angry, so I guess I would ask if she could paint a picture for what the anger looks like, what she's describing as angry, to make sure everyone's on the same page.
I mean, he likes to throw things sometimes and shout and scream when we're having a conversation and it gets really escalated, and then in response I shout and scream back. And sometimes he just stomps out and leaves, and doesn't come back for a little bit. He also gets in trouble at school for fighting and shoving kids into lockers and stuff. He's just like really angry all the time. Yes.
I know it said in the case study that Maria's an immigrant, so I want to ask, like, what is your experience of being an immigrant been like for you?
So multiculturally responsive.
It's been sort of a mixed bag. There was a lot of violence in her neighborhood when she was growing up in Mexico, and it hasn't been so bad now that she's moved to America, but she's had a hard time kind of finding her footing. She doesn't really have much of a social network here apart from her sister, and she's had a hard time finding steady work. They barely make it with her wages as a waitress, and she feels a little isolated.
I'm thinking about like the, I guess, cultural implications between the relationship with the mom and the son. So like, clearly Miguel is being raised in America, whereas his mother was raised in Mexico. And I wonder if like his assimilation, I guess, into more of an American culture is causing conflict between their relationship. So I guess I would ask like, how that has been, like ask the mom how that's been, like, or how that plays a role in their relationship.
I just don't think he understands. I don't think he understands the dedication to family. I don't think he understands what it means to be a son, what it means to be a part, and of what we're, the family dynamic. I don't think he understands what it means to be a sibling it's always just selfish about themselves, and he's so caught up in the social medias and these different things, what all the kids are doing in school that he just neglects in his family, and I have no choice but to push him into understanding more and really driving it into him the importance of family.
Then I might ask Miguel, how does hearing that make you feel right now?
What was that?
I might ask, after you share that, I might ask Miguel, like, how does hearing all that? How are you feeling after hearing that? Or...
I think it's stupid. I
Everybody thinks I'm angry, but I'm not angry.
I think it's stupid.
Are you Miguel?
Yep.
Okay.
That's great. I have no idea how to be an 8-year-old boy, so you're welcome to. I was real stuck trying to figure out how to do that.
My mom just wants to be like my best friend, but she can't, and I don't want it. And she just hovers around me all of the time. And when she's home, she hovers around me, but when she's not home, she's out doing whatever. She doesn't even care. And so it's like, yeah, Mom, you had this type of upbringing and what have you, or whatever, but I want to do what I want to do. I want to talk to my friends. I want to be at school. I want to be doing things out there and not just constantly having to go to every single family thing, having to be here for every single family meal, having to be here and all of the time.
Maria, you bring up your communication. Who's Maria?
Who knows?
Okay.
Whoever thinks of the answer first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a lot of anger, and you struggle to not match that anger with Miguel at times. I'd be curious to try some family sculpting with you guys, so maybe we could see. I'm trying to remember family sculpting, but just trying to see kind of pause everyone in the middle of a fight and kind of see what that looks like, and maybe how we can see kind of where Miguel's maybe feeling some ways and where Mom's feeling some ways. I don't know, Brian, if you actually want us to do this, but family sculpting.
Oh my God!
Family sculpting is just something that came up to my mind, in trying to figure out some communication between them and maybe how some fights look between them too.
So temporarily invite the fight into the room. Maybe Gottman would do that with couples work, where it was like, pick a topic that tends to elevate you and have that conversation, and you get to see how that goes.
Pretend you're folding laundry.
I know family sculpting's a little bit different, where you're not necessarily using voices, but I think you could use one or the other, or mix of the two, or
Do you want us to do that? Okay. I just wasn't sure.
I almost didn't bring it up for that reason.
No.
I was like, I feel like
Another fun one is sometimes I've had people in my place who would have had them do the role reversal. You know, you be mom, you be son, and have the conversation and say what you think the other person says.
That's neat.
I feel like in this particular situation, I would want to eventually, like, I'm not sure how to get there, but I feel like I want to elevate Maria's interest in quality, sweet play interaction over doing some of the, like, rule-making things. Maybe loosening up on how much time she's requiring for her son to be, but using the time together in a quality way.
Mm-hmm.
How would you guys?
I almost thought of that too, like maybe ask the sister to take Carmen and then mom gets some time with Miguel and vice versa.
Mhm.
Sounds like he keeps acting out. So then I thought of too, like, hey, there's not a father to balance out time with him. Maybe he wants attention, and even arguing or yelling, he's still getting attention, even if it's negative. So when you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of my train of thought too. Like maybe
So
try to budget
logistics
like
of
some like bonding between them. If he likes soccer, they can go do that, or she could take him to a sporting event or something like that.
Yeah, I
Like
don't really care for. I mean, I don't really feel like I don't know enough about narrative therapy yet to like it or not. But this could be maybe a good one to externalize the conflict in the home, so it's not all put on Miguel.
Especially
So he doesn't feel like the bad kid, and like build up that sweet kid. Like, what does a sweet kid look like? Yeah, like how is he a sweet kid? I'm reminded of that video we watched. I think it was
that boy.
With the stuffed animals.
It was with a teacher, and he got like expelled from school. Or
The boy with
Oh,
Bell.
the good boy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good boy reputation.
Yeah, and
Yes.
so just like
about the good boy reputation.
trying to let Miguel be a witness to his mom, saying generous, kind things about him.
That's
So
what I was thinking
good.
too, to wrap up
Yeah.
this session.
Really good.
Like have them both talk about like their strengths,
Mhm.
because I think you're the one that said that, like how Brian, how beneficial it was like for the child adolescent to hear the parent talk about positive things. Were you the one that shared that story? I don't know. One of our teachers. Sure. There's a lot.
That's such a good application
Yeah.
to this.
Absolutely.
I think we should co-therapize as a large group.
Do you think that would be intimidating?
Or is
to
that
a
like
client?
7, 8 co-therapists? That's normal.
I know we can have some
10 now.
tired ones. We can have some that I don't know. I think this is like a good.
We
Good
could
number.
we could see like
Always
3 clients a day.
Mhm.
Seems cost effective.
I wonder if you can bill for that.
You had a family of 8, you could pull that off. Each one of you have an individual plan. We don't have another question or two. We don't have to hit every topic in every one.
Thinking about Maria again, and just because it sounds like it's really only her and her sister who came over here from Mexico, so just balancing what it was like leaving her family behind, if she did leave any family behind, how that has affected her. Just talking about that, the part I think Casey brought it up, just what it's like being an immigrant and moving over here and those struggles.
That's a really good point. Because I was remembering when we were talking about Mexican families, how strong the parental bond is. So maybe she's manifesting like her own loneliness and just like attaching to it. Because I know it's really common for mothers to really attach themselves to like the like young boys or like AMAB individuals and try to put them in that replacement position of like their father or their significant other, and she could be trying to be like, you have to be the man of the household kind of thing too, and why she's so worried about all of these things. It's really a thing coming out of fear of where the child is going, and also not letting them leave the nest and letting them find their own friends and becoming developed in that way. Just sounds like a lot of fear. I mean, because their father left before they were born, so there's also that too. And especially with getting pregnant, father leaving, and then moving around 25 years old, alone with just their sister, and twins on the way. Like, I can only imagine how traumatic that is.
I'm gonna throw in emotionally focused, and I'm gonna do that by saying or noticing that there was a lot of secondary emotion and anger and frustration and acting out on the kid, and what's beneath it is probably a more primary emotional need for attachment. It's not happening for both of them. So kind of somehow with EFT externship training, figuring out the right things to say that help Maria articulate it less in terms of like get with the program, do the rules, and more about I want to have this relation, like I want to be connected to you, and I'm struggling to have all of my life go on and try to make this happen. How can, kind of ask for what she wants in a less angry, reactive way. And the kid is 8. The kid is not a teenager yet, so the kid probably really does have attachment wants from the mom and is maybe starting to get into that avoidant, I know I can't rely on my mom for that. So if he could break the boundary and be a little less reactive, he might actually really get something beautiful out of it.
I was also thinking about when we added about her having other relationships, like trying to fill that void as well, and really healing that part of her own self so she has more time to spend with her children. And focusing on them. Well, I mean, like honoring her own needs as an individual, but maybe not kind of getting like into shitty relationships. Because like, what is it communicating to him about what kind of relationships are healthy? These short term or what have you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's fine. So one last question. Do you think the son feels seen?
No.
By us or by the mom?
Both.
I feel like Rebecca did a really good job of it.
Yeah.
I feel like of everybody, you had your eye on him.
Do you work with a lot of kids? Yeah. How would you, is it like phrasing things differently? Like, can you, or like, how do you feel seen more? Is it just like?
I think at a first session, you want a lot of buy-in from the kid. So you want to make sure it feels like a safe space that they'll want to keep coming back to. And so like, even just like looking at them, making eye contact with them. Because a lot of times we just focus on the adults in the room and like the story. And kids are just kind of sitting there like, yeah. But like,
Is this kind of like asking, like when we were talking about yesterday, like disabled people coming in and not addressing the person, addressing the other person, like the interpreter
Or the dog.
It's like, or the dog, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like addressing like the other person to tell this other person's whole story.
yeah, I think just making a lot of space for them. Because even then, mom could hear it like in a different way. And it's hard, like, more than likely in this case, they would just be like, like look down, not want to talk a lot. But even just being mindful to acknowledge them frequently in a way that doesn't put them on the spot, but just like brings them in, focuses on like their positives. This kind of thing.
Would you ask more like broader questions, like how do we feel like to the room? Like how do we feel about that? Or how do we feel about chores? And like give space for both of them, or you said more pointed questions at the kid?
I don't know. I feel like sometimes that parents will just take over them. But I think that if you model like direct conversation with the child, like parents will see that and be like, oh, like they're asking my really thoughtful questions. Do I do that at home? Like they have ideas too and like thoughts on things. And so just like modeling what you want to see parents doing at home can be good.
Yeah.
And,
No, it's great. It's super great.
It's a really good question because I think a lot of our thinking was around her behavior, not his feelings.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like we want to like not prove ourselves, but like first session, like you want to build a lot of rapport with the parent, and so I think it's really easy to focus attention on parent or like our ego gets in the way, and so the adult to adult contact can like that's where we want to go, but I think it's really good to focus more on the child.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point, because I mean, like, that's why they're there, you know? The child is theirs for that.
We're gonna remember this.
Yeah.
Like, at some point when we're with kids in the room, this will be
This will go
revisited. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, first thing that popped into my mind early on in this was that there was an assumption, like, this behavior at school, this behavior at home, anger, anger, anger. Well, maybe, but is that how the child sees it? Are they angry? You mentioned, different layers of emotions. So how do they see it? And that's the scene part. Are you angry, or is there something else going on underneath? I'm sad. I'm afraid that people aren't going to like me. So, we do, sometimes when we're young, we don't do things that are helpful to that, in an attempt to try to connect in ways. And so, yeah, really learning what the student is feeling at the home environment and at school environment. And we just interpret it as bad behavior and anger, where it can often be something very different. But let them bring their language, or help them figure out language to express what they're experiencing. All right. Well, thank you so much. Yay.
The chair forked me out. No, I'm good.
Would we work with them together, or would do individual and some together?
Like first, in this situation, we're presenting with Miguel. So he's the client.
Miguel's the
That's
client.
who we're, working
You wanna
on.
go?
Well, that's right. That was the.
I knew you would be like, well, it's bad, but I'll fix it.
Yeah.
Because I
might not really want to.
Sure.
Kind of going through the alphabet.
Who's first on the alphabet? Me? No.
It's based on last name.
And apparently, yeah, it was me.
H is the first.
That's so weird.
Isn't
I'm
it
always
weird?
in the middle.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm K and I'm number 2.
I think back when Emily was in the cohort, she was in front of me.
G.
She was in
G. Yeah.
G, yeah. But even that, to have G, be the.
Yep.
That's weird.
What are they doing?
All right. You want to read for us?
Yes, I can read. Okay. You have a child that is presenting to your office for therapy with his biological parents. The child's name is Carson, he's 8 years old, and he's in the 3rd grade at the local elementary school where your practice is. His parents are Chris, age 31, and Olivia, age 29, who have been divorced for about a year. There is no specific event that happened before the divorce. The couple has always had a high level of conflict and disagreement in their relationship and decided they weren't happy together. The couple met in high school and got married when Carson was 2. They are both currently single, living separately, and don't have any other children. Carson is starting therapy because first, he's been having a lot of trouble at school. He has difficulty making friends, and his teacher describes him as quiet, reserved, and anxious, and not confident. Carson has had trouble staying on task in class and hasn't been completing any schoolwork or in-class activities. According to the school, Carson is consistently worried about many different things, specifically his schoolwork and his parents. According to Chris and Olivia, the school also reported he has a difficult time calming down. Due to what's been happening, the school suggested to Chris and Olivia that Carson should start therapy. In therapy, Carson is quite shy and has a hard time opening up to you. At home, Chris and Olivia also report that Carson is constantly worried about everything. They also tell you that Carson has nightmares and trouble falling asleep every night, no matter whose house he's at. Carson's been presenting this way for about 2 years. Chris and Olivia never sought any professional help for what's going on. They thought Carson was having trouble because of the divorce, but ever since the divorce ended, Carson's symptoms have only worsened. When you ask more about Chris and Olivia's relationship, they tell you it's poor. They've been having more conflict with each other ever since the divorce, specifically about custody and how to parent Carson. They do not have a steady routine of when they each have Carson. It's inconsistent, and custody depends on the week and what's going on. Regarding parenting, Chris thinks Olivia is too lenient with him, while Olivia thinks Chris is too strict. Chris believes that Olivia is being too much of a friend to Carson and expresses his dislike for her lack of discipline with Carson. Olivia thinks Chris doesn't pay enough attention to Carson's feelings and hates how he has too many rules. Chris and Olivia are at a crossroads. They care deeply about Carson and want her help so he can get better, be less worried, and not be so difficult to handle.
Your,
That is really
your mission, if you should choose to accept it.
Yeah. So it sounds like they need couples therapy.
Well, to take a note from the last session, I feel like I want to take Rebecca's tact and really kind of check in with Carson and hear about what the experience has been being with the parents together, what was home like then, like what was life like then, what were dinners like, what did you guys do together on the weekend, what, like kind of get a snapshot of what life was like then, and then ask similar or different questions to get the same type of vibe of what it feels like from his perspective in the new, since they split up 2 years ago.
I think that's great.
And what game
Oh,
would-
should I ask you?
And what game would you be playing while you're asking those questions?
Oh, yeah. I think I would actually have some play toys and ask him to externalize Chris and a Carson and a whatever the other mom is. So I would actually, if it's okay, can I do that for a game initially? Kind of like talk about that, maybe ask what like what they would look like if they were at a restaurant together, what would that look like? Or if they were at the park, what would that look like? And what it looks like now, so you can kind of get a, just because that's something we read this week.
Did the nightmares that Carson had started having, did they happen immediately, or within like the first 3 months after the divorce, or did it happen further on, progressively after?
Good question. With the way like I wrote the case study, I said like just overall he's been presenting this way for about 2 years. So it started like before the divorce happened, like right when Chris and Olivia were starting to like have a lot of conflict and problems. Like they've always presented that way, but it was more specifically like right before the divorce that all of that started.
Was there a specific event that triggered any of this?
Good question.
No.
It was just the it was just the high level of conflict between the parents that has been causing a lot of issues for Carson.
Are his nightmares, or Carson, are your nightmares the same? Like, do you have the same nightmare all the time, or are they different?
It's a plane crash every time.
That sounds really scary to have every night. It is. Is it just you on the plane?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry I just said that. I'm gonna go out of the room and spit my gum out. I'm a little afraid of flying, and I'm flying
Yeah, me too.
in the day, and I don't want to hear it. So.
Okay, that's real. Is it just you on the plane, or
No, it's full of other random people.
they're all random? You don't know any of them.
Yeah, goes down and just like flames.
Sure.
I think I attached to the nightmares or the nightly routine too. So I would ask Chris and Olivia, what was the nightly routine, pre-divorce, and has there been any consistency at either house post-divorce? And then I thought of asking Carson too about the nightmares, like when you were playing checkers over there, trying to get him engaged in a game, making small talk, and then kind of saying, what types of nightmares do you have? Can you explain them to me? See if he'd open up maybe when he's kind of semi-distracted.
Yeah. Maybe coloring it, like drawing it, or do you think that would be like really dramatic? Like, should we draw what your nightmares look like? Oh, I don't know. That might be horrible.
Yeah.
Probably not a good idea. Okay.
I do like the aspect of fitting in some sort of like coloring though. I don't know exactly how you would do that, but I think that's really useful for kids.
Maybe like coloring, like drawing with, how do you feel? Let's draw your mom, and how do you feel
I
about
was just
that?
thinking
I
of
like
like draw your
that.
family.
I like
I was
that.
saying Molly's readings when we were talking those readings too, where they had the kids that had traumatic events and they drew stuff too. I know what you're saying because I was reading some of that and I was like the mom that kind of got her bashed in and those kids witnessed it. and they asked the kids to draw, and all 3 of them drew almost the same scene. And yeah, I was reading that thinking that was really traumatic, but she was saying how they talked about it and they were like processing it as they drew it, and it actually helped. So,
okay. Or like, yeah, no, that's great.
So yeah, it could be a really therapeutic thing maybe for him to get it out on paper.
In the psychological testing that I used to do, we used to have like our children clients draw pictures of their families too, and I don't know what my psychologist necessarily got from the pictures. I mean, I have an idea, but just kind of shows family dynamic and what things might look like. I was also going to ask, Carson's teacher describes him in a bunch of different ways, and just like maybe asking Carson, like, do you feel that way? Do you think those are things that are actually happening to you, or do you notice them happening as well?
I think that's good because other people are describing him that way, but we don't know if he himself
Describes himself that way. Yeah.
I were to ask the parents, how do they feel about routine for their own personal lives? Do you feel that you both work better with routine, or is it worse for you, or is it really hard for you to maintain a routine? Are there like specific roadblocks to maintain a routine, to like kind of get reflection about it in terms of like, okay, this is just about trying to understand balancing now that you are single people outside of divorce or outside of your relationship? What do you do with your kids? You know, it's a good question. Because I guess like now another parent wouldn't be holding you responsible necessarily for your actions. It would just be you. I imagine there's a learning curve for that. I've never had children who have been divorced. So.
Did anyone talk about the maybe the name it to tame it with their fighting and the conflict? It might not have been a momentous event that caused the end of the relationship, but if it's high conflict, there might be an association with his life and his both of them, and causing anxiety and undue, like he could maybe use some work integrating.
Do you think it's like it got to be too much? It was like the same thing, small, but after a while it's like too much, and that's how it ended?
I think it could affect anyone in any number of ways. It could be like a one-off thing. It could be repetitive. It just matters whether he has associations with feeling uncomfortable in that environment.
When I was thinking of the worry too, like the EIU thing, where it's like maybe he's worrying about something, but he constantly gets dismissed all the time, or somebody's telling him it'll be fine, just let it go. But maybe he needs somebody to talk about what he's worrying about. I mean, at 8 years old, they're pretty aware of what they're worrying about. It's not like you're trying to talk to a 4-year-old. So maybe actually asking him what he's worrying about, letting him talk out loud, or see if he would open up about it.
I would want to ask about like his relationship with both of his parents, and like because they talked about how their parenting styles are different. So sort of figuring out if one of them works better than the others, and also I feel like a lot of kids whose parents get divorced are really encouraged to like pick a side. So if that's something he's had to deal with, and like what that sort of looked like at the time.
Yeah, I think getting the child's perspective on that is really, really important for sure.
But like that SIFT, starting to work through SIFT in session, helping both the parents learn how to do that for themselves and help him do that. The SIFT is the sensations, images, feelings, like getting him more skilled at understanding what's going on would be a really good. And I was also thinking, what's the bicycle wheel thing called? Is that Mindsight, or is that?
With all the C's on it, the
He seems to use different names at different times, so I get a little confused sometimes. But yeah, so the wagon wheel hub with the spokes that go out.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of come to your central mind, but you can go to different areas of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like if we've been talking about today that all the DSM disorders can come from integration issues, then like I would want to know sort of how the anxiety's feeling in his body, if you even call it that, and like what sort of thoughts and feelings are coming up with that. Just to kind of take a step towards that, like better integration if he's stuck in the left side, to kind of look at those feelings too.
I would probably talk about as a solution or like kind of a prompt thing is like doing these like meditation practices or like grounding practices before bed, and kind of like starting off that process in this kind of like chill state, and like whatever parent is with them, doing it with them too, on top of, you know, obviously adding routine, which is critical, but maybe seeing if that like helps, and seeing like the parents are more calm, and then it helps them relax more because it's not that repetitive, like high stress environment that's been really traumatic, you know, because there's no consistency.
What would people try to do with, because this is a really common one, two households that are different. The strict household and the lenient household. That's often partly why the divorce, you know, so there's just a difference that the divorce can happen in those situations, and then the student just now gets to live in, they finally get to run their household the way they want to, but it's polar opposite for the student. So how do you solve that? Or what are options for that?
Think about that video that we watched. Do you remember that video? Was it last semester? About the mom that cried a lot, and because there was multiple households and multiple parents.
Oh, yes.
Grandma in one and the
Yes.
other.
The little girl.
Getting the parents together and having like agreeing on a certain parenting style and communicating to make the rules consistent as best they can, or how they can compromise together to make rules consistent over both of them. I mean, it's easier said than done.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like I had a pretty good marriage even though it ended, and I have a good relationship with my ex-husband even though we're not married, and we still have really different concepts of how to parent, and I don't think there's any way that that's changeable even if we thought it would be best for the kids, because I don't think there's agreement that that would be best for the kids to have agreement, you know, so it's like what was my point? My point is I don't know how fruitful it is to try to get a lot of people to decide to be the same. It's how to live with the difference, or how to navigate the difference, or that was just. What's your experience?
I don't have a good solution. I did the finger thing with you, right? At one point, where when you have a difference in any area, the three solutions are one person becomes completely like the other. Second solution is doing the opposite. Third is becoming the same person, which is really hard for people to do. And the solution that I've come up with is you keep walking in, giving up a little bit of who you are, not fully who you are, until you get a range difference that's workable. Like both people can say, okay, I can live with this. You're not excited about it, but you can live with it. And that I've never had that thought, and this is like a new thought for me in relation to this, but because I run into this one all the time. And it's really hard to even tell the parents, well, both of you give up how you would do it and come up with like this third, very middle ground. But if you can just reduce in any level the distance so that both parents feel like they get to run their house the way they're going to run it, but take the edges off of it, and even get input from the student, like, it's still hard going back and forth, but it doesn't feel as hard as it used to be. Like, this is more doable. So you're kind of doing this family negotiation. So, like David Elkind, who wrote The Hurried Child. It's one of the books I put up at one point. He also wrote the Family in Balance, and talked about how in history, in family systems, different members of the family at different times in cultural history have been like the one that was sacrificed. So like typically one person in the family got sacrificed. Well, the rest kind of got most of what they wanted out of it. And his solution was, and I've actually done this with my own family, with my kids sitting down. We talked about it, is to basically say nobody will ever get all of their needs met within a family system. So we're going to all try to get about 70%. We're going to try to create a structure where like about 70% of our needs, each of our needs are met. And then the 30% that can't get met here, we've got to figure out how to get them met outside of here. And so it's kind of this negotiation, understanding that you just got to get the unit to a place where it's like, this is okay. Not fantastic, but okay for everybody. So that's just a thought that I have.
Yeah, I just think about that. That's a really great thought, Lisa. Or like maybe the reality is like understanding that the parents are not the same person and separating really that two. And so it's like maybe it's creating a ritual that as the kid transitions to one place or the other, it's like we're going to the farmhouse, gonna do farm things, and like this is the rules of farmhouse, you know. This is the rule of city house, or like what have you, and you know, like having them whatever, and so they know, but also having those key things that make them great. Like farmhouse, we get to XYZ, and city house, we're get to XYZ, or you know, I'm just thinking about compartmentalizing like that.
I like the idea of having a ritual around it, like maybe like when they do the handoff, like they all, like the whole family, like has a meal together before they go to one house, and then so that like every single time, Carson can feel connected to both, even if like he kind of leaves one behind, and then he kind of also has like something to look forward to, and he can pick the place or whatever, or just like they go over to, you know, if
what I'm picking up on from all of this is that the couple have diminished the need for them to have a relationship that's anything. It kind of is like back burner, we're nothing, don't even look at us, we're nothing to see here.
Yeah.
But the reality is that how they are affects Carson, so that deserves attention.
Yeah. If they don't, I mean, if they were just, if they had gotten divorced or separated and they didn't have a child, you can peace out technically and never, you know, it's still difficult. But with a kid, like you're both still parents, like you still have that role. And like, I feel like so many parents just forget, you know, and I get why, but it's just like, you have to still find a way to be parents, even if you're not, you know, because they have, everybody in this family has a new role to come up with right now.
And like depending on how long they're married for, I mean, like even their own identities, like who am I outside of this relationship now, and what do I want? Where am I going? How do I heal? There's so many things going on. How do I balance my finances now that I don't have, you know, let's say hypothetically, like they're had joint finances, like how do I pay all my bills? And
And I would say while trying to like navigate this situation with them, just like to normalize that they do have differences and that's okay, and most divorced parents do things a little bit differently, so I think just putting some normalcy around it to make them maybe feel a little bit better about it, and oh, we're not terrible people for having to come in and do this. Just a little talk around that kind of stuff too.
All right.
we good?
Good. Thank you.
job.
Yeah, well written, you guys. That was good.
Can I have one of your donuts?
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Go for it.
as I understand your outfit is, it does like match the colors that go
Oh, really?
together really well.
It's like I thought it was gonna be like in the 70s today. I don't know what I was thinking. So I didn't pack a coat or any sweater. So I have several non-matching garments on.
Yeah. But
So, these, I flipped these names, so just listen to me.
Okay, we're not gonna look. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Ricky, a 6-year-old boy, is living with a foster family. He lives with his biological brother, Caleb, his foster mom, Julie, his foster dad, Steve, and Julie and Steve's biological son, Max. If you're reading up there, the names don't match this. Ricky's mom is in jail, and the court has determined to terminate parental rights. Ricky has never met his dad. Prior to being fostered, Ricky and Caleb lived with their uncle and grandfather, where they were chased with a knife and sexually abused. Next, Ricky and Caleb lived with their aunt. When Ricky comes to therapy, he and Caleb have been living with their foster family for 6 months. Julie and Steve share that Ricky and Caleb often pee on household objects and wake up with nightmares. Ricky struggles in school and has a past diagnosis of ODD and ADHD. Julie and Steve are considering adopting Ricky and Caleb, but are not sure they can handle the boy's bad behavior. Steve is quick to punish and raises his voice when the children misbehave. Julie says she is overwhelmed and not sure she can do it anymore. When you meet Ricky, he presents as shy and calm. He does not want to talk about school or home life. He often looks down when you ask him questions. You observe that he calls Julie and Steve mom and dad. He often shares memories of living with his aunt. You learn that he enjoys spending time outdoors playing games and fishing.
why doesn't he live with his aunt anymore?
She wasn't able to care for him anymore. So now he's like a child of the state, I guess. He has like no legal guardians. Like the state is his legal guardian.
Is his ODD and ADHD more about his internal emotional lack of integration and different parts jockeying for positions, and it's actually really not a diagnosis? I'm not asking you to answer that, but like I'm wondering if he really actually doesn't have those things, but he was in a traumatic series of years and has struggled to metabolize it, and maybe those are things that could be alleviated and make it such that the mom, whose name I can't remember, the foster mom, might feel more excited about the future possibilities.
Going off of what you said, Lisa, we've talked before about how ODD is kind of more of an attachment disorder than a conduct disorder. So I'm kind of wondering what his attachment relationship with his foster parents looks like, especially because like there's been so much transition in his life already. So sort of building those like secure attachments, I think, could probably go a long way with like what are opportunities that he can be seen and soothed if he's having a lot of nightmares. Are they comforting him when he wakes up? You know, like stuff like that to build that bond, so he maybe doesn't feel like he's in fight or flight mode all the time.
I just said yeah.
Oh. I would ask them what bad behavior means to them. What does that look like? What considers it bad behavior? Problem's not around the kid. It's like a solo transition.
Well, it sounds like he's peeing on objects and is having school troubles. I guess I just assumed that was what the bad behaviors were.
Oh, I was thinking there was more than that.
Yeah, because there was the dad raising, or the foster dad raising his voice was in there. It's like fighting with siblings.
Sounds like peeing in the stuff around the house is like definitely like a concern, like growing up in this original house that, you know, they didn't have their needs met. So maybe like peeing in the corners or peeing in the rest of the house, you know, could be due to like maybe being like trapped in certain places where they had to pee in different places, or like not having access to a bathroom, or like I would say, like, is it happening at specific times? Like, is it after something stressful, or is it like even like a time of day? Maybe it's like every day afternoon they like were locked in the spare bedroom or something like that. Like, so they could only pee in the corner.
I remember Molly saying that one of her clients did that, peed in holes in the wall, and it was, I think, what she thought it stemmed from the sexual abuse. So, yeah, just kind of, I don't really have a question I'm ready to ask yet.
No,
but
that's a really great point.
yeah, I just remembered that.
Yeah, because he was sexually abused.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, there isn't really like a question I would ask, but there seems to be a lot going on. Ricky seems to have like some apprehension about like attending therapy, so I think I would be really focused on like building a rapport first, asking him about like the stuff that he likes to do, because you talked about that like in the case study, and then with a little bit more time, I would dig into some of the more heavy stuff that's going on.
He likes fishing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's this game where you have a little pool. You have like the
Oh,
little fish where you
I love that
Maybe have
Everyone
like,
knows the fishing
I
game.
love that game. Like, have him pick up a fish and be like, and like that fish will be his like foster mom, and like, oh, tell me about this fish and your foster mom, and like catch another one. Who is this? This is my brother Caleb, and have him like talk about this is my
That's
teacher,
a
and have him
good
talk
idea.
about
Great.
his like life around him with like the fish to
Yeah.
give it like less like stress, but it's like, oh, you caught a fish. This fish is.
Mm.
Good idea.
You could do a lot of different things with that game for
Yeah,
sure.
that's great.
Yeah.
I just think, how would you approach like the essay experiences with him?
Mm-hmm.
How would you start that
That's
conversation?
what I was wondering too.
What experience?
Sexual assault.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's that name it. Maybe some of the name it to tame it. Either the name it to tame it is a little bit like the NET, narrative exposure therapy to me. Do you know NET?
I'm familiar with it. I don't have a lot of exposure to it.
Just like getting in there early. To help metabolize it before it just takes root and
We'll go back to the play therapy articles to where they have like puppets or the toys, and all of the kids that had sexual abuse would act it out and put them in jail or put them somewhere, you know, and they got to talk about it and process it that way.
Yeah.
So I know what I think you're trying to say is like let him get it out in a safe space where he can talk about it and and kind of take control of that situation and let the child be in control of their perpetrator, really.
Maybe it's like the fish thing, like they describe those individuals, I forget who it is on the case study, or like maybe they are drawing it out, mom, dad, and then drawing like these other people in their life and how they visualize that, and talk about how it makes them feel. It's like, well, did you feel like this when this happened? And kind of like go around that.
Right. The timing of addressing the trauma, I think, in this situation, so this came from a real life scenario that we tweaked, and the timing was really tricky because there was so much change for the boy and his brother at the time, and the trauma actually wasn't addressed like for at least a year into it until the foster parents decided to adopt, and then he like totally changed because he felt secure attachment, I think. And so then he was willing to talk, but he like wouldn't address any of the trauma when it came up. And it was advised to not for a little while because they didn't want to like overwhelm him because he was having so many school issues and home issues, and the foster parents were so inconsistent. And,
Do you still see this child?
not anymore.
I don't know why I'm thinking of a genogram and whether that would be helpful, but being able to see visually a stable home now, if you did a genogram once they've been adopted by the foster parents, and so they can see chaos and then see what they have, and they can all value that together and like somehow identify and claim the importance of that for everybody might be meaningful. I'm thinking about a Virginia Satir piece. I can't remember exactly, but she actually had the child get markers and choose the color and say why they chose that color, and then they would draw different kinds of lines connecting their child's piece to the other people, and they could tell the story of why they're using that kind of line. And it was shocking how young and verbose people can be when communicating those things. Like, I was surprised by how much was discovered.
One of the therapists used, not with Ricky, but with the brother, they're actually twins, IFS, worked really well. He was able as a kid to be like, there's a part of me that gets really angry when blah, 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 and not see himself as just like a bad kid at school. So it's kind of cool. The kids do grab onto the parts language pretty quickly. And then psychoeducation for the foster parents, because they were like, what the hell is going on with this being? And they like didn't know that it was...
I was just going to say that, like, maybe giving the foster parents some psychoeducation on some attachment styles and just the severity of what this client what their foster kid has gone through, and kind of the steps to take with that, with the healing process.
What if you didn't think the foster parents were like fit to, as a therapist, be foster parents? Is that, you heard that? If you didn't think the foster parents were fit to be adopting the kid, like how you would move forward?
Doesn't that kind of fall with mandated reporting? Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. No.
Does it?
Would I be asked?
No, you weren't asked.
Yeah.
Just like ethically.
So you would that would be you contacting the system, the foster system. I would want to learn about doing it subtly.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen a lot of foster people who do foster care that I'm scratching my head. I can't figure out why they choose to do it, because they don't seem super well fit for it. They don't seem happy with it, or like, in my judgmental opinion. And the foster care system doesn't seem to notice or care. Like, I feel like, have you noticed that with the work you do, that there's a lot of people who are doing foster care that don't seem super, like, on the top realm of parenting?
Yeah, for sure.
Why do you think that is?
Why is that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've wondered about that. Like, what are people's motives for money?
They get money.
I had a client or a patient at one of the eye care clinics I worked for in Minnesota. She openly admitted that's why they're taking kids. She was paid whatever per month, and it was so sad because she would bring them in because the state paid for their eye exams, but there was very little compassion. Actually, the doctors got involved because they were worried about the safety of the kids, and they said ethically they couldn't not say something. And they said they'd seen her year after year, and it was the same thing, and it was like a couple in a row, and she pretty much like would half brag about it. So I don't know if they reported her exact. Like, I guess at the time I was kind of naive and I was just like, it didn't sit well with me either. And I said something. They're like, no, it's already in discussion. And they just didn't want to involve us techs in it. But yeah, it was really sad. Pretty much admitted she got whatever stipend a month and admitted she figured out like it only costs half of that to take care of the kid and provide the bare minimum. So they pocketed the rest. And it's heartbreaking.
So having these 3 case studies so far, how are people's own nervous systems sitting with this? And kind of what I'm thinking, because this is a lot more than sitting with an individual client. You're sitting here and it's like, what are the needs of the child? And in each one of these, it's like, we should probably be doing therapy with the parental units or foster parents separately. So like, the child needs their own, the parents need their own, the family system needs their own, but I'm sitting here as the family therapist needing to think of all 3 at one time. How are you doing with that?
Heavy. I feel like my brain is going this way,
Yeah.
trying to figure it out.
Right? And it's hard because there's like similarities with each one, and then each one I kind of have thought of something a little bit different too, but there's kind of been consistent themes. Like a lot of our case studies all kind of have themes of children and their behavior, and we're all linking it and realizing it's trauma.
Yeah.
And then it's just so relevant going into Molly's classes lately.
And I feel like with an individual client, like you get to just like go down the line. Okay, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this. But then when you have other family members, it's like, okay, now let's go back to this and let's piece it into this. And
you're kind of doing this with everybody.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And like we said, like there's clearly needed therapy for the parents on the other side of it too.
And I think all these case studies and we're reading about all these things, you just realize how important it is for kids and how much there's probably been a lack of because of stigmas, lack of resources, insurances won't cover, parents can't afford it, people don't show up, and you just start to, realize how important it really is to get them help and how it can make such a big change later on in life.
Yeah.
I'm wishing I could bring you all into family therapy with me because so many people have had such like different ideas of what to do that I never would have thought of. And I'm like, oh, what if I
right? Like what if
I never would have thought to go fishing for the family memories. Like what if that's the thing that gets through to them? Like I know there's lots of ways to do it. But
Well, guess what?
We can
That's
talk
what
to each
staffing
other.
and
Yeah.
processing is.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, we'll exchange texts.
I think my current theme, I think the theme that's run through all of my reflections this semester for this class is just like, I don't know how not to side with the child immediately.
that's so real.
Every single time I'm going to be like, y'all need therapy, you need your own therapy, and then I, can do this. And I can't reconcile like how, even with the little training we have, we know exactly what is wrong with the parents, and we're just like, but then you can't push them. You can't tell them what to do because that gets us nowhere. So I can see myself very easily like attuning to the child and being protective of them and like wanting to know more. And then with the parents, just watching them make mistake after mistake after mistake is just like,
Well, so many
I
parents
don't
have their
know how to do
unresolved
this.
trauma, and then they're
Right.
reliving it out.
like I can have empathy for them, of course, but like I just, I think it's going to be a challenge not to be prescriptive and just be like, you two need to be adults. You are the adults. That's all I want to say to every single.
So do enough joining, and eventually sometimes you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even with all 3 of your case studies, that builds my compassion. Because here, each parental unit has a storyline that you're like, oh, they went through their own version of what now the student is going through. They're living out the adult version of that. But they do, they're the ones more in a position to do something for themselves. And so it's that art form of, yes, we're going to help your student, and will you allow me to come beside you? Because you have significant needs here. The first mom, single parenting with all the transitions in life, like, you're not going to be able to parent until we resource you.
Yeah.
Like,
Is this where Go ahead.
You know, we can ask you to do all these things, but you're not going to be able to until you are supported enough yourself.
Is this where like skills training really comes into play? Like, because that can kind of help bridge that gap before they really know why they're doing things. Like with parents, like where you can say like, let's take a scenario of like, okay, the kid is, you know, had a bad day at school. Instead of this, let's try this or whatever. Because I feel like, was it Molly? I don't know. All of y'all are saying the same thing in just in different ways. But it's just that, like, it kind of gives them something tangible to hold on to it, at least in the beginning, and feel like, I'm making progress, I'm doing something.
Right. Because we can see the whole package. Like, oh, can't we just get you here?
Yeah.
But, like, even with individual, you know, people, you have to find the stepping stones between. Can we help you get here by next month?
Right.
And then we'll take on this one.
Because the insight's going to take a long-ass time.
But the hard thing is, we want for the student, we want this now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, you know, build your patience. So you know, you're all gonna hate me by the end because everybody's just like, we know, Brian, play the long game. I say it all the time. It's true.
Is this one thing that you would refer them to, like family, like DBT work, like skills work?
If that's a resource, yeah, I'd love to do that because I'm not a skills trainer. That's my biggest weakness. I'm so abstract, the concrete, just go pure. When people come in and want pure skills work, I'm like, you got the wrong person. This is not my forte. I can do a little bit. It's not my forte.
I feel like equifinality. I feel like DBT could be great, and I'm like totally on board with that. And I'm also thinking about you could skills people till they're blue in the face, but if they have parts that are getting in the way of them being, like if they're triggered into acting a certain way, unless you take care of that trigger and help them understand it and that role and preferred roles, they're still going to struggle with parenting. So I think it's
maybe just the initial, like, give them something they can work on immediately so that they don't lose faith in themselves. You know, just give them something, which is where, like, I think Katie and I were talking about, like, where solution focus is great. Like, we would use it in conjunction with, because it really can get you sort of like, or strength focus, or I can't remember. But yeah, I think if you can give somebody something to walk out of there, at least in the first couple sessions, something that they can do to make their lives better now just a little bit, and then then they'll trust you a little bit more eventually, and then you can work on the, like, deep, so top down or whatever, bottom up, I don't know.
And communicate that to them.
Right.
I can, you know,
yes.
There's some major steps we have to take. We can do this now, and we'll work towards this.
Yeah. I think, like, when June and I did our role play in Molly's class, like, one of her feedback was, like, if you're in the middle of assessment and someone's getting flooded or whatever, you can say, we're going to get to all that. You know, like, you can kind of give them a vision of the future.
To take that step back.
Yep, like, I hear you, and I know that's hard, and we're going to get to all of it. Right now, though, I want to make sure that, like, Caleb is safe, and blah, 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 blah.
It's actually a really good point. And I did that work with my parts. Like, I have a part that is a closet full of shit, and we don't look at that right now. I can't handle that right now. And so my therapist is like, that's okay. You can tell that part that we're not going to look at that. They're okay over there, and they're safe. We're just going to go over here.
Yep.
But it's a closet full of shirt.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see you one more time. Before we go. I've been chugging my water.
Let's take 10 minutes and we'll come back and we'll finish up on science.
Good job.